What's our time frame looking like tonight?
Like until bedtime? Can't believe that guy.
Okay.
Let's do this.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the April 17th, 2024 Select Board meeting. This meeting is being recorded. Please rise for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll get started tonight with public comment. Yes, sir.
I've got a little laryngitis, so I hope my voice holds out. I'm going to make a few...
Sir, name and address,
Oh,
please.
sorry. Brian Watson, 20 Oak Road.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a couple of comments that are a little critical at the beginning, but I'm going to end up with some good thoughts, some constructive thoughts. So I'm a registered architect and have practiced professionally for 35 years and involved in architecture and planning. So I know what a good planning process looks like. I've been involved in many planning processes. I was on the town planning board for 10 years, and I was also the town's representative to the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for 22 years, and 13 of those years I was the chairman of the North Shore Task Force, which is a regional group of 13 towns, and we conducted many public processes, and I'm very familiar with the quote visioning process. I say that as a sort of preface because I do feel that the process we have been involved in so far at the Hawthorne site has been really abysmal. I believe it was disjointed and fragmented. I believe it was opaque. I think the results were very random, and it was just poorly done in so many ways that it would take me a long time to go through them all. Basically, the townspeople, and by the way, I did participate in the public processes along with hundreds of people. The townspeople were never shown a variety of concepts. They were never taken through an orientation that would show the townspeople what's involved in comparing plans. It was basically three versions of a park plan shown over and over again, and without orientation. The fact that the process was bad is completely indicated by the fact that a library from the sky essentially plunked on the town through no process at all. It was not organically, it did not organically come out of the process that was conducted. I want to emphasize that you engage in a process not for the sake of process, you engage in a process because it allows the town to make a wise choice at the end. If there's many people that were involved, many people have many ideas, they all need a hearing, and we draw, as a town, we draw them up schematically. It doesn't take time, it doesn't take a consultant. You diagram them, and then it's a process of comparison. It's not one plan at a time. It's not, here, do you like this? Take it or leave it. It's a collaborative process, and you compare the plans. And the townspeople who participate learn that the way to choose a plan is by comparing the pros and cons. Every plan will have good points, every plan will have bad points. But if you don't do that as a town, if you don't exercise that option, you've short-circuited the potential for getting a really good project. The goal is a really good project. And in the end, the town will rule. The townspeople will rule in the end. But it's a disservice to simply show the town a plan and say, what do you think? I mean, we're not, that's premature and it's out of sequence.
Thank you.
Can I make one last suggestion to end on a positive note? I think the town could have a meeting at the select board first. We go through some orientation about what makes a good process. Then we have the town do that before we start looking at the nitty-gritty of plans. It's very doable. I don't mean to make it sound like it's not doable. It is, but it takes a little bit of, it takes a little organization.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, sir.
I'm Richard Smith, 55 Thomas Road. I'm a member of the Historical Commission and Historic District Commission, formerly on Open Space Commission, but I decided 3 committees were too many. So I'm just going to make a few brief comments on the same process, and I'm going to I would echo some of the comments that Brian has made. I'd also speak specifically about libraries, because I worked on 30-odd public libraries over my career in the architectural world. So I think I understand the library process and what goes into getting a fundable project off the ground. And at the point that we're at right now, in order to do a new public library, we're looking at about 10 years probably for the process, because it's going to require a new grant round. We're too late to get into the current grant round. The next one probably is 6 or 7 years out. We've got a programming process that has to involve the public library. So there is a very involved process, and whether it's appropriate to tie up this site for 10 years in hopes that we might be able to pull off a library on it, I'm not sure is really going to be a valid course of operations for how to proceed with this site. I would agree with Brian that I think from my perspective, I feel like a lot of what we've seen so far has really been out of the architectural magazines, and I think we need a broader process, and we need to think about a way to get involvement that lay people can get their hands around more easily. One of the things I've learned in all my years of architectural practice is that most people don't understand plans. You put a plan in front of them, you put out an idea, they look at it, they nod their heads, they try to look like they know what they're seeing, but they haven't been trained. So I think we need some other means, other approaches that are a little less architectural to try to get the community more involved and find ways to bring other sorts of images that maybe the public is more easily able to comprehend to kind of restart the process. That's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Art Friedman, 82 Millet Road. I have 2 comments to make. One is addressing the ARPA funds that will be discussed tonight. I'm very pleased that you're going to discuss, hopefully we'll do something with it, but I think it's a 3-stage process here dealing with Fisherman's Beach. One is trying to use the ARPA funds to get things, if not started, get the ball rolling. And then once we do that, maybe we can discuss the sewage fees that supposedly aren't up to where they should be to help additionally funds. And then I haven't heard anything about grants at all, and I don't even know who to approach for a grant or who does it, if it's all helter-skelter in this town or there's some grant writer. I don't know, being naive about that. So anyway, the other thing is, as far as the Hawthorne project, I appreciate the effort that's gone into it. The town has a history of buying properties and really not fulfilling what they were supposed to be used for. I mean, we go back to back when I first came to town, the sewage treatment, quote, plant was never done. It was kicked down the road. Finally, we didn't have funds, and finally had to go join with Lynn for that. The other thing is the Bertram House property. We had options to buy that property. It never got done. We lost that opportunity. It would have been a good opportunity. And the Temple Israel property, which was bought, we're going to have a police station, we're going to do this and this. It only got half the property. There was a whole bunch not purchased. And then finally, we ended up, I would say, probably giving it away for steel to housing. And then finally, the Hawthorne property, it's an asset. It's supposed to be for open space. I think it's important. There are so many buildings going on in that Humphrey Street blocking off the view. It'd be nice to have it open, frankly, because I don't know if we need another library. I haven't been to the library myself in years, but from what I hear, a lot of people like the library and its facilities are adequate. So I think we need to, and as mentioned with Brian and the other gentleman, we need to think about what we really want to do with this space. And I guess there'll be a meeting coming up, I think, next month? I'd appreciate it, to know when that is. But I appreciate the efforts of the committee and the board with these projects, but I think a little bit more stepping back and see what we really want to do with this property, because it's a big decision to make. And frankly, the town has not been very good about making decisions about our property we buy. I know we've got the housing project, but that's something else I don't know anything about. Thank you.
Thanks, Art.
Hi, my name is Tasia Vasilio. I'm a resident on Lewis Road in Precinct 5, a town meeting member and the chair of the Board of Assessors. Due to the short window of time allowed for public comment, I'd like to direct your attention to the opinion piece from today's Lynn item submitted by the Board of Assessors. During last week's Select Board meeting, the assessors requested that we be allowed to participate in discussion regarding the proposed Article 23, which would have resulted in changing our board from being elected to appointed. The article was voted down, and while discussion ensued between the town administrator and the select board, the assessors did not have an opportunity to address disparaging statements that were made about us. Therefore, we responded through the item. I have brought printed copies here for anyone who would like to read it and request that the article and my comments be included in the meeting minutes. I have additional information I'd like to add on my own behalf. First, he's not here, but I'd like to thank Select Board member Peter Spelios for acknowledging during last week's discussion that Mr. Fitzgerald brought Article 23 forward to address concerns the town administrator has with our board. I believe the warrant article was brought forward with a punitive intention, and this acknowledgement supports my belief. We have had several challenges with Town Hall over the past few years, and while many of these are rooted in lack of staffing, there has also been questionable behavior. Our town administrator has spread mistruths about me in what I believe to be an attempt to discredit me, and he has not been cooperative in clarifying his understanding of our roles. Over the past 6 months, I feel that he and his staff have been trying to intimidate me with passive-aggressive threats, including reminders of State Ethics Commission fines, as well as the criminal penalties for false valuations. He has also mentioned bringing in town council and has had them join our meetings on occasion. I also feel that I have been pressured to rubber stamp values. When I review or question data provided to me for my approval, I am described as being over-involved. When I express my frustration with Town Hall refusing to follow the board's directive, or I question changes to the values that were never approved by our board, I am described as being demanding. Because I have called out the false presentation of information on a select board member's abatement application, and on 2 separate occasions questioned why the assessed values of certain select board members have decreased or remained stagnant while their neighbors increased, I am accused of targeting select board members. Last week, Mr. Spelios stated that having the discussion during the select board or town meeting would not be appropriate. Please be clear that I have nothing to hide and I welcome a public dialogue. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi, Mike Kelleher, Precinct 4, Pine Hill Road. I want to thank Tasia for her thing, but it's a kind of a common theme, because I'm here because of last week's meeting I watched, and when the Library of Trustees came up and said they had no discussion about this Hawthorne property, and I hear from Tasia, and I hear from police officers, and I hear from the fire department, that there is just a broken system in our town government, and that it's really quite astonishing. So anyway, that's I just wanted to make a comment on that, and then also say that library proposal, the Hawthorne, I unfortunately was not able to attend those events. I had prior commitments. I know you said there was a few hundred people there. I don't know when they were. I remember seeing it, but I couldn't make it. I had a basketball game one day and a work thing the other day. But when you say you have a couple hundred people there from a town of, what's our current population?
15,000.
15,000? I don't feel that's a fair input on what is a centerpiece of our fantastic town. I love this town. I think it's great. I think when you pull into from Lynn, coming on Lynn Shore Drive, you see the Hawthorne and you see that whole skyscape, it's like, great, I'm glad to be home. This is a beautiful town. I love being on the water. And all of a sudden, from that comes a proposal, because you guys are supposed to be stewards of our tax dollars, and that we're going to spend $30 million in a library, when I haven't heard a word, and the library hadn't heard a word about the deficiencies with the current library, but we're going to spend $30 million and put it on an oceanfront. I don't know of too many oceanfront libraries across the country. I've never been to one. If you know of any, please let me know. But if we wanted to do that, a friend of mine brought up a great point. There's this house on Littles Point Road for $5.5 million. It just got lowered to. It was at 6. It's 9,000 square feet. What's the square footage of our current library? Do you know, Sean?
Not off the top of my head.
Is it bigger? Huh? 16,000. So we could buy this, which Little's Point is beautiful. From my boat, this house is magnificent from the water. You could buy this house for $5.5 million. We could probably spend, let's say, $5 million, make it handicap accessible, and then you could put a library there if we really need an oceanfront library. That's not what I'm suggesting we need, but we could save the taxpayers $20 million. It just doesn't seem to be a good financial stewardship of my taxes when we're coming up with $30 million libraries in one of the most iconic parts of the city, and I think, and I think we need to, take a step back, as some other people have said tonight, and really have a discussion. I think it should be on the ballot so we actually get to hear from the 14,000 people as to what we're due, because I think the Hadley Hotel project is a disaster as well. I think it should all be considered, and let's really define our town and take a step back and hear what the townspeople have to say, because I know it's not happening at Town Hall because the employees there say they're not being listened to. So how are you going to listen to the taxpayers? Thanks. Have a good night.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
Ted Kennedy, 83 Magnolia Road, Precinct 4, town meeting member. I just wanted to state a few things, and they didn't really read the letter from the item, but I really think when we talk about lacking expertise and experience, let's just go through this. Neil Sheehan, Vice Chair of the Board of Assessors, has served on the board for 25 years, serving as chair for at least 10 of those. Prior to this, he served on the Board of Assessors in Burlington for 8 years. In total, he has more than 33 years of experience. Tasha, chairman of the board, has been a member for 7 years. She's been certified real estate appraiser since 2003 and appraised countless homes throughout Massachusetts. She currently works for Mutual Bank, where she orders, reviews, and signs off on all appraisals for commercial loans secured by real estate. Lara Goodman, secretary of the board, has served on the board for 3 years. Every board should have a member who brings the voice of the stakeholders to a table. Lara does that. She's well informed of property transactions in town, fair-minded and balanced. She has served the community as a town meeting member, school PTO president, as an employee at the Jewish Community Center, as a teacher for the Swampscott Recreation Department. I don't know. I really don't know how you can say that they don't have the experience. It's getting really bad, guys. You have to understand, people are really upset with what's happening with the select board. And it's coming, your time's coming. And if you don't get it and you don't see what's happening, there's going to be issues all over the place. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. All right. Seeing no hands in the room, no hands on Teams, we will move on. We'll move on to our discussion on town ARPA funds.
All right.
Sean.
So I've had a chance to sit down and take a look at some of the recommendations after the board met last week. I'm actually revising some recommendations. I'm removing the recommendation for the mobile town hall, even though I still believe a mobile town hall would have its value. I think we need a little bit more time to think that through and balance a few of the other priorities. The town of Andover does have a mobile town hall. I've looked at that over the last couple of years. I've talked to officials from Andover. They use it for a lot of public engagement opportunities, and at some point, both our library director and our health department really see that as a great vehicle for bringing government closer to neighborhoods. With that, I'd like to recommend that we advance a project that has been in our capital improvement plan for the last several years. That's an ADA accessible bathroom at Phillips Beach. Right now, we have porta potties at Phillips Beach. I think, for the most widely used town beach, bringing an accessible restroom and perhaps a snack shack to that beach would be helpful. If anybody has been down there with individuals that are disabled, or you see people trying to use a porta potty on a 100-degree day, it really is an unfortunate situation, and we can help address that. I'm sticking with my recommendation that we allocate $500,000 for pedestrian safety. As we've discussed numerous times over the last year, we have a list of complete street projects that have been previously supported by prior boards, but we have intersections all over the town that need to be addressed. $500,000 may sound like a lot of money, but frankly, a couple of projects could eat that right up. Another $400,000 for Swampscott's parks. We have fences, we have the need for additional shade and grading at some of the properties. I did reach out to a number of Swampscott coaches over the last week and talk to them about these needs. I do have a list of priorities, and certainly that's a list that far exceeds the $400,000, but both our rec director and assistant town administrator, DPW director, feel as though those dollars would go a long way in addressing a number of important improvements. I'm recommending $100,000 for historic preservation. This is an opportunity for us to really help support a lot of good work that's happening right now with preservation, but also think about how some of these dollars can help us be more proactive and supporting some of the opportunities to preserve buildings that perhaps we could get ahead of and help support a preservation strategy. I'm recommending $100,000 for a climate action and resiliency manager. We have completed a climate action report. We have a lot of opportunities to really seek grants and better strategically align a number of resilient initiatives. Another $200,000 for Swampscott's public housing, redevelopment, feasibility study. We have talked a lot about affordable housing, but the affordable housing that we currently have at our housing authority is inadequate. There's not a unit that is ADA compliant, and frankly, we need to be a stronger partner with our housing authority and address some of those challenges. I'm recommending $100,000 for a townwide economic development study. As I've mentioned numerous times, we can't just cut our way out of problems. We have to make investments in Vinnon Square. We have to make investments on Humphrey Street and the MBTA neighborhood. There's no time like the present to really advance a project like this. We have all sorts of synergies happening, and this is the time to really bring a planning effort around economic development. After a number of discussions with town staff, but our consultants, I'm recommending $50,000 to advance some work as part of the Fisherman's Beach illicit discharge and detection and elimination, or our MS4 work. This would help us pick up about 2 months' worth of effort to identify scope of work of $1.7 million that could help us prioritize ways that we can protect infiltration and inflow onto Fisherman's Beach. I'm I'm also recommending $200,000 for resiliency projects. These are projects that are in our plans, but also can help us look at some strategic grants and help match grants that currently we're looking at. And lastly, $121,555 for public health programs. Our public health department, our Board of Health have advanced recommendations for public health programs to address long COVID and mental health and some of the broader public health responsibilities. We have slide decks and all sorts of initiatives with regional public health programs, and this would help support a critical need that we have as a community.
Thanks, Sean.
So, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to make a motion to spend $1.7 million of the ARPA money on Fisherman's Beach sewer problems and $182,000 on the MS4 permit.
I'll second that motion.
Do we want to have additional discussion?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So I'd like to follow up on why I want
go ahead.
to approve it. By putting this ARPA money towards these two critical projects, we'll be doing a few things. We're taking care of a problem that we haven't put any money in for 4 years. We've known we've had a serious problem in the Fisherman's Beach area for 4 years when we filed the SRF grant application. This is a way to get work started right away and to give relief to the ratepayers, which are also our taxpayers. This gives equity and relief across the entire town. We took care of a survey, we sent out a survey, and the survey was very clear. A large percentage of people want this money put into the infrastructure. The Finance Committee weighed in 3 years ago, and the Finance Committee was unanimous. They wanted the money into the infrastructure. They actually said, give Gino the entire $4 million. The new committee that we have, the Water and Sewer Infrastructure Committee, recommended that we use this ARPA money to immediately begin work on the Fisherman's Beach area sewer problems. I just don't see how spending money on these different issues here is an actual necessity compared to what we have here. And as much as I've listened to people on this board say, let the ratepayers pay it, to roll in almost $3 million onto the ratepayers in one shot, when we have the ability to put just short of $2 million immediately in, it'll give relief to everybody. And I really even want to stop constantly having to talk about ARPA. I'd rather pull the trigger and make this work.
Well, I have a very substantially different perspective on this. I definitely want to fix the pipes, but I don't think this is the right way to do it through ARPA. There are a number of different ways you can fix the pipes, but there's only one way you can do all the rest of these things. Because you can't do these things through a state revolving fund, which is set up to fix the pipes. We have a sewer enterprise fund set up to fix the pipes. But you can't do any of these things through a sewer enterprise fund. That's why we call it a sewer enterprise fund, is for the sewers. And we haven't been spending enough. Sean talked about that last week. We haven't been spending enough. Everyone can go back and say, yeah, exactly, you screwed up, you screwed up, you screwed up. Okay, we screwed up, whatever. We are here right now. We have an option to do this a couple different ways. I think, can't speak for everyone, I believe everyone wants to get going on fixing the pipes. That's not really at issue here. So I think we really have a very kind of subtle difference about financing mechanisms. and what are the options for doing different financing mechanisms. So I had a feeling that we would need to get into this conversation tonight, so I came prepared with some markers. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to make sure that as a beginning to this conversation, we're at least all dealing with the same deck. And feel free, if someone wants to go ahead and talk while I'm writing, that's fine with me. I just want to make sure people have the full picture of what's going on.
Hey, Doug, you might need to grab your microphone so we can hear you.
I'll write first.
Okay.
I could try. I'll have to use the other board then, Wayne, but yes. Okay, thanks.
Sound of Russian water running in the background.
I think I've seen this guy on YouTube. I recognize the back of the head.
All the bald guys look the same.
No,
Welcome to Doug's.
I would never say that.
Okay, just wanted to set the table. For Kings, I know the main event here is about fishermen's, but I just want to set the table about Kings, because I think some people care about that too. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, we spent $6.5 million so far on Kings Beach alone, right? So, we can't say we haven't spent anything, we can say it hasn't been as much as maybe some of us would like in the last year or two, but work has been doing, we've been doing work until like within the last year, okay? Didn't allocate money recently, but work has been happening until last year, if I understand correctly. In 2024, this calendar year, we've got two main things going on. We've got this MS4, which there's money in the capital budget already for that, so I'm not sure why we have to pull it out of the capital budget to put it in ARPA. That's $182,000. That's MS4, that's outflows. I won't pretend to know all the details of that. Liz, anyone else here can get the details of that. We have dozens of outflows that we actually have to keep track of all over town. This is a required thing for us to do. I doubt anyone has an issue with us doing that. We can decide again whether or not we got 3 different funding sources for that. You could do sewer enterprise fund, you could do capital, you could do ARPA, okay? But again, you can't do a housing redevelopment feasibility study out of the sewer enterprise fund. Yeah. So, okay, also in 2024, which the work that's happening right now, that this board voted on, $400,000 out of the ARPA, the $2.5 million ARPA, that work is already happening. IDDE, testing, sampling. Phase 2, this is happening throughout the year, okay? Unfortunately, some of us wish that it would get done faster, but it looks like it can't. So it's gonna take basically the whole year to get that done. Once that's done, then we'll be able to bid that work out, to actually do the cleaning of the pipes, right? That's gonna happen in the beginning, basically, of next year. Month, 2, whatever to do it. When can they actually start the work? March? Yeah, I don't, something like that. Then we get into actual source elimination, that's phase 2A. This board already voted $1.7 million out of that 2.5 to actually do that work, okay? So for Kings Beach, for the next 2 years, we've got money lined up, basically, to do the work. Maybe I put this a little off center. If that money runs out a little earlier, this board already voted, and the work is already underway to prepare an application for a state revolving fund. And I messed that up. State revolving fund loan of at least $2.5 million. We already voted to do that. That process is in place. That will go in August. It'll get approved in the beginning of next year. May town meeting, town meeting would have to approve the bonding that goes along with it. Extremely low interest loan. And that would carry us well into, maybe throughout 2026. Okay, so for Kings Beach, I just want to kind of start with that. Kind of, I think, I see a couple head nods, like, make sure we're all on the same page with where, I think we're doing basically everything we can for Kings Beach right now. In terms of the money, you could allocate more money now, and this is actually counter to what the town administrators proposed, another $1.8 million. I frankly don't even see the need for that right now. Maybe we get another year down the road, and maybe that makes sense, but I frankly don't see the need for that. So maybe I should just pause there and see if, from the board's perspective, if I've kind of misrepresented anything or any questions.
I have a question.
Yeah,
What about fishermen's?
that's where I'm going next.
Do you need to raise them?
No, go to the other board. No, go to the other board.
What's on the left-hand side, I'm sorry, that you wrote in red? Left-hand side.
SRF loan?
No, left side. Your other left.
1.7 million?
Sorry?
1.7 million.
Thank you.
So, on fishermen's, we haven't done anything yet. We have to do the same MS4 work for fishermen's. That's part of the 182,000 capital. It's already in the proposed capital budget. We have a $1.7 million, quote, shovel-ready project ready to do for fishermen's. This will actually be source elimination work because we've already basically know where the work needs to be done because of an analysis that was done a couple of years ago. So I think we're all in agreement that we need $1.7 million in order to get going on the work at Fisherman's. The real question comes in just what's your funding source in order to do that? The initial assessment was that maybe that's all we need in Fisherman's. I think maybe a lot of people might be skeptical that that will be the end of what we'll need for Fisherman's. We don't know. But we'll get in there, we'll start doing the work. In 2025, in the middle of the year, in parallel with what we're doing for Kings, and you can pull this SRF loan back, this would be the source for continuing to finish the work at Fisherman's. Okay? So maybe a lot of that's obvious and just everyone's on the same page about it, but I just wanted to make sure that in everything that we're doing, one, there's a lot that's happened. Kings is, I think, well-oiled machine, basically, for a couple of years. And on Fisherman's, I think we all agree what work needs to be done, about how much needs to happen, and that we've got additional sources in the pipeline that we can use past the 1.7 million. And out of all of this, just to try to kind of bring us together, the only question is what we use to fund that. So,
Yep.
questions?
I do have some questions. I'll come back to my seat. I'm giving public comment. So I guess the commentary about being a well-oiled machine doesn't really sit well with me since the federal and state partners are saying we're not. So I guess if your perception is we are, then explain to me and others how those two disparities exist at the same time.
Well, because we're not here yet.
Well, I think you're saying at Kings Beach, we're basically a well-oiled machine.
We've got things in the pipeline to do all the work we can possibly do, funding source-wise and scope of work-wise, for the next couple of years.
So why is the EPA having an issue with us?
I'm not in conversation with the EPA, and I'm not sure if they completely exactly understand this, but I can imagine they might have an issue with that.
What? You wanted?
So I am happy to kind of give my perspective. I've been in a number of meetings with the EPA. I think they've been clear. They want us to be more aggressive. That's the word that they've used. My recommendations are to add some additional funding this year to actually be more aggressive. It's clear that everybody is a little bit disappointed with the results of the consent decree that said that we should model how we were going to do our work under the consent decree after a community that wasn't on the ocean. It was a community that actually was in southern Massachusetts, and we didn't get the results over the last 6 years that we thought we would get. They've been, frankly, disappointing. It's the reason why a couple of years ago we decided to pull together state and local officials at Swampscott Town Hall, and we said, something's not working the way we wanted it to. How can we look at supplemental strategies? And so we were able to get some funding to start looking at other things. That said, we've always made a commitment that we were going to stay on point and look at ways that we can comply with the Clean Water Act, which is essentially MS4. We have to do that every year. We have to go inspect pipes. We have to chase down illicit discharges and detection and eliminate it. We're getting better at that. And we're in a number of contract cycles. Things are starting to get routine. But it's coming with a commitment that the town's going to be more aggressive, and the state's going to be more aggressive, and the federal government's going to be more aggressive as we seek to find alternative supplemental strategies that will help us have a level of confidence that these resources are going to be safe for future generations. I know it's frustrating to a lot of people because everybody, wants to fix these problems. There's nobody that wants to wait longer than we should. But frankly, for the better part of 100 years, we haven't really supported these responsibilities. Over the last few years, we've focused on school buildings, and we've focused on municipal finance, and we've focused on other needs. And frankly, we haven't been able to balance all these priorities effectively. We're starting to get there, though. And I think these plans, these funding plans, it's important that we do it in a way that it helps us balance all the other priorities that we have, too.
And Sean, I'm not sure whether or not, we've taken steps, this board, in the last few months that are relatively new news to the EPA. You know, I'm not sure if they actually see it this clearly. Like, I'm not sure, in my conversations in our meetings with Gino, I'm not sure how much more work you can actually do on the pipes next year than this with a contractor in a certain amount of time. If we can do more, great. You know, I'm not opposed to that, but I do feel like this is a very kind of prudent, fiscally responsible, active process that we have going at Kings Beach. I totally agree that the bigger gaping hole right now from a planning and resource allocation is on fishermen's. But I've said my piece.
So I guess if we allocated $2.1 million of ARPA to Kings Beach and Fisherman's Beach projects, are you saying Gino couldn't spend it?
That's my understanding. Well, Kings, I'm not so sure.
I'd have to check with Gino, but, you know, frankly, he has expressed concern about, you know, the volume of work and how to schedule that and coordinate it. We're a small town, 3 square miles. I mean, there's a lot of disruption. When we rip through neighborhoods, we're actually going through and we're creating quite a bit of disruption with this type of work. And so, you know, he does want to have a strategic kind of plan, and we want to coordinate it. You know, we have to do it during construction months that are supportable. So it's better for us to kind of align this from a fiduciary standpoint to get the maximum value for some of these dollars.
So I think, you know, we can come back and tweak and add and take another vote if we feel like there's like more we can do on Kings, you know, with kind of fine tuning that, what's the capacity in that area to do that. You know, this is a lot of work, a lot more work in 1 year if you do both of these things. Forget about what the funding source is. It's a lot more work than I'm aware of that's ever been done in this town in 1 year. And there was some reason that Gino had a certain amount of work in the past. I can't speak definitively to say that's absolutely the max and you couldn't do it. But again, I think the only, at least the beginning quibble or important distinction to start off with, in order for us to actually address this ARPA issue, is why not use the sewer enterprise fund, especially if I'm understanding, David, did you say something, what's the deal with state revolving funds and whether or not what's the state thinking about that?
No, I've had a number of conversations with Representative Armini. Representative Armini encouraged the town of Swampscott to use state revolving funds. She said, please use the state revolving funds. The interest rate is advantageous for one, and two, there's also the potential for loan forgiveness from the state. So I can't quantify what that number is, but that was mentioned to me in a meeting. Loan forgiveness. Use the state revolving funds. Do that. Include that in your funding sources. Please do that. So that was at the encouragement of Representative Armini, and I think it's a great use of funds, especially if there's any potential for any type of forgiveness aspect from the state.
So using the enterprise fund is a great idea. However, we have ARPA money that is a federal grant that people have paid into that we can use right away, and people are not being taxed on it. The enterprise fund means that we're paying for it. It's not like there's money sitting in there. It means that we're going to bond it and we're going to pay it. Taxpayers are going to pay it. And your question as far as these other projects can be funded through capital. You could put them in capital, and the capital committee can decide whether or not they're a good idea. Finance committee can decide. Select board can decide. But there are other ways to pay for this.
Some of them, maybe.
Every one of them could be paid for.
So when we talk about infrastructure, you know, there certainly is an aspect of water and sewer infrastructure, but there's also just infrastructure. You know, ADA bathrooms at Phillips Beach. I mean, that is infrastructure. That's beach infrastructure. That is something that individuals need. I mean, that is a need. We
Yeah,
already,
but I mean, when you're talking about infrastructure, you mean on the questionnaire, when people filled out the questionnaire and answered that they wanted to see the money go into infrastructure. I mean, obviously, I'm not a soothsayer, I don't know what people thought when they were filling out that document, but I don't think they thought they were filling it out for beaches at Phillips Beach.
but
I don't think
that has been on our capital plan. That has been something that we have been discussing for a number of years. Also, too, a number of these other initiatives are something where we can plant acorns and we can be multiplicative and we can invest today for results tomorrow. You know, looking at a climate action and resiliency manager, I mean, that's someone who can come, I mean, I don't think any of us are in disagreement that we are a coastal community in need of resiliency, in need of resiliency investments, in need of having leadership to apply for grants so that we can do more. I mean, we haven't done.
And it'll be a very positive ROI.
Yes.
My understanding is we can't pay for personnel out of ARPA. Is that different? That's what
Yeah,
was
that's
explained
gonna
to
have to
me.
be revenue replacement. We're gonna have to,
Revenue replacement?
we'll have to budget for that and just, use that as, revenue for the town.
But if we already have 182K in capital for the MS4, why wouldn't we just pay for that out of ARPA, and you could take $100,000 out of capital to pay for this?
This, in some ways, illustrates the point.
But I'm just.
Right, it's like, you can only do that if you're using the sewer enterprise fund to do that. And once you start, you're limiting yourself in terms of your financial flexibility when you use ARPA for this infrastructure. Because ARPA's more flexible than the sewer enterprise fund is. And going back to the survey that people are quoting from 3 years ago, well, newsflash, we've committed $5 million to infrastructure since that survey. So I don't think that we can actually quote a survey from 3 years ago and think that we understand what people would answer now in terms of what the priorities should be.
So maybe we should send out another survey.
Also, that's not what I was doing. I was saying when people filled in that bubble, I don't think they thought.
No,
we were talking
earlier,
about
the
Phillips
discussion was
Beach.
that we were quoting that fact that there was a survey and that people said they wanted infrastructure, and that was a long time ago. So,
But also, let's go back to making investments and talking about housing, talking about the investment that we can make within, with a Swampscott Public Housing Redevelopment Feasibility Study. I was at a recent Swampscott Housing Authority board meeting, and they voted unanimously to support a redevelopment plan. They want our help. They need our help. To date, the town has invested zero, virtually no money in anything to do with the Swampscott Public Housing. These are Swampscott residents. These are, there are 120 some odd units within the 3 campuses. None of the units are ADA accessible. Nothing has been built in the town within the last 65, 70 years. This is $200,000 is a pretty substantial amount of money. However, this could potentially return tens of millions of dollars in state funds to build new, state-of-the-art, accessible housing from the state for Swampscott residents. I mean, this has the opportunity to really be multiplicative and to bear fruit. And, Mary Ellen, you made a point about relief from rates. I mean, we have some of the lowest sewer rates of any of our peer communities. I mean, that shows that we have not invested historically in these sewer projects. So I think we have I think Doug did a great job of outlining, the funds, the funding sources, and I think we have the opportunity here tonight to really make a number of investments across the board in infrastructure and in investing in our town that will allow us to really see these small investments and large investments bear fruit in tens of millions of dollars as we move forward. Nothing is going to be quick. Nothing is going to be solved tomorrow or the next day. But we do need to start we do need to start the work. And I think all of us are committed to making sure that these Kings Beach and Fisherman's Beach projects are funded appropriately. I think we're just talking funding sources. I do think that, I think that the return on these investments is greater than the savings from bonding or from using state revolving funds.
Well, I think that the other thing that's important here is to understand that this is not the totality of fixing these problems, right? There's a lot more millions of dollars after these dollars and those dollars.
Yeah.
And
It's gonna keep coming and
those-
coming to catch up.
And so, to me, we absolutely are gonna be using sewer enterprise funds, we're absolutely going to be using SRF loans. But if we don't have to start using them right now, like, we should keep that tool in our pocket, absolutely we should use it. And if we can keep spending it, we could be getting Gino more money to keep spending.
Well, that's true, if that's the only issue that exists in this town.
It's not the only issue that
Okay,
exists in this town.
so I think, I mean, it feels to me like, you know, we are in an incredibly blessed position here, right? We actually have an opportunity to do right by Kings Beach, do right by Fisherman's, and do right by all these other interests that are represented by these projects, all at the same time. We should be like jumping for joy right now. Like, we can actually make our beaches better, make our streets safer, make our parks better, preserve our historic resources, deal with climate change, make our public housing better, improve the economic development of our town, you know, make it more resilient, make the public health, like we should be sitting, it seems to me like this is an amazing moment where we should be like, hallelujah, like we can do it all. I mean, this is just like, but if you say no, we have to do pipes through ARPA, then all this goes.
It doesn't,
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it
It
does.
doesn't.
It does not.
Where does it go?
Doug. Where does it
Why
go? It
not,
goes
why
in the
wouldn't you just
capital
put it into
budget.
the
It goes-
capital
but
budget?
You budget for it.
You
These
budget
are
for
nice
it,
to
you have
have.
conversations, these are nice to haves. We have a crisis at Fisherman's. We've been listening to it. We listen to it week after week after week. And we have people that are concerned about running their recreational activities at the beaches. We have citizens that are very, very upset. We have not taken care of Fisherman's. We have the EPA on our backs.
And we're talking about taking care of Fisherman's. It's not a question of taking care of Fisherman's. That's not the issue. All
But if
we're
we have-
talking about is financing. And I would have to say that people living in substandard housing, public housing, is just as important as a dirty beach. In
Well,
fact, you know, people are living there every
Right.
single day.
How much is
okay?
that, 200?
Swampscott residents.
Right.
Okay,
So
that's
I
important.
only
okay?
asked for.
The fact that our
I didn't-
climate, I'm
But there's
talking
still
now.
money there.
I'm-
There's still money there.
Where is, it's only here. It's not anywhere else. Right? So-
I didn't ask for 2.1. I asked for 1.8, so there's still money left.
Sure, you're gonna take 2.1 million and condense it
No.
into 300,000.
I didn't ask for 2.1.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but you got 300,000
I
left.
asked for 1.882. So there's more money, so you could use it for that.
Yes, you could pick one of these things, yes, you'd have that much left over, I understand that, yes.
Well, I mean, yes, sometimes you have to make really tough decisions with the money you have left. I mean, I'm not saying any of this isn't wonderful things that we should absolutely be trying to fund. I'm not saying that none of these aren't recommendations. To be honest, even as crazy as it is, the mobile town hall, has extreme community benefits. I'm not saying any of this, we should just throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, these things have to be budgeted for, they have to be prioritized, and maybe you can't have them all at once.
Or we can.
I have a quick question on the ADA bathroom. That has been on our capital plan, and when I followed up to ask why we weren't working on that, I was told that we couldn't build in that zone because it was either AE or AV.
So we have looked at how to site that bathroom, but we might have to work with, some budding properties. So there's a way to do it. We've looked at moving it out more towards the roadway, so.
Okay, because because I was in support of it. I voted for it, and I'm just telling you what I've been told from the planning board.
Yep, we're
that it-
aware of
they couldn't do it there.
the sensitive wetlands, and there's a way for us to kind of advance that.
Just a point
Go
of
ahead.
information, I'm not sure, Peter, I'm not sure when you came in, Mary, we're actually in discussion phase, Mary Ellen made a motion. I'm not sure if you're aware of that.
I don't know what the motion is. Yeah, so Mary Ellen made a motion that was seconded by Katie, and then we've discussed this for the last.
What's the motion? I'm sorry.
Mary Ellen, go ahead.
The motion is to spend 1.7 million on Fishman's and 182 on the MS4 permit out of the ARPA. That's my motion, seconded by Katie.
Okay. Do we have further discussion from the board?
I do have a point of information, as you just said. The public, so some of these projects are not detailed, so I'm not sure which resilience projects you're looking to pay for, or what, just as public health, $121,000. And then if we could just explain into a
Sure.
little bit more detail. But then also, what about the opioid money?
Oh, they're still working on it. The health department is still working on the opioid money. And that could be, so the,
The public health money, I just thought maybe could come
mhm.
from some of
Yeah.
those.
So both our public health director and our public health nurse have proposed a number of initiatives for public health. They range from outreach efforts to address long COVID, individuals that seem to be, addressing or facing some health issues related to COVID illnesses, to mental health issues. We know that we have, a significant uptick in mental health concerns. We've recently reached out to the Marblehead Health Center. There's opportunities for us to have additional services and programs that would help support Swampscott residents. So certainly there's slide decks that we have that kind of go over some of these recommendations, and happy to, get into some of the additional details. But, our public health nurse and our public health director have strong recommendations for some of these programs.
I'm sorry, can you read your motion again? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand it.
So my motion is to spend $1.7 million of ARPA money into the sewer work at Fisherman's, and 182 on the MS4 permit.
Thank you.
Additional comments, questions from the board? All right, we have a motion, we have a seconded, we can go to a vote. All in favor of Mary Ellen's motion?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
I oppose.
Opposed. Our motion fails.
So I'd like to make a alternative motion. Actually, probably two of them. That the first, I don't have it written down or anything, but
You want to use whiteboard?
I ran out of gas with that, So the first would be that we commit to doing $1.7 million of work at Fisherman's funded through the Sewer Enterprise Fund. And I don't know the technicalities, frankly, but that's the gist of it.
So when we talk about the capital plan tonight, there's a recommendation, the capital plan, I've got a revised recommendation that we
Okay.
support.
Right, I did see that, that's right.
Support that, and if the board supports that recommendation, the capital improvement committee's meeting on Monday, the finance committee will meet soon after,
So we'll pick that up then.
and then it'll get presented to town meeting. Yep.
Okay,
So
all right,
that's
so we
the
can
process.
put that aside then. So then, I would make a motion to support the proposed ARPA recommendations that we have in front of us here, as stated.
Do I have a second?
I'm sorry, can you mind just stating what they are? Or do we have it to put it on the board or something?
I don't know if we have it to project.
I do think it's a,
Sean did read it out earlier,
Okay.
before you got here.
okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So, and I just read them off kind of too in my soliloquy or whatever. So that's the motion to support the recommendations as stated in front of us for the use of ARPA funding.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second to allow conversation.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I'd like to start.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about our resiliency conversation last week, and we were talking, going back and forth between whether or not we should, was it raise walls at Eisman's or just build more seawalls? Now, we should raise them. No, we shouldn't raise them. We should build more. And then all of us got an email 24 hours later from a resident who knows more about resiliency than we will ever know, who pointed out why raising beach walls at Eisman's doesn't do anything. And he sent us maps, he sent us information, he sent us technology, he sent us data that showed us that you can go ahead and raise Eisman to be 20 feet tall. It doesn't matter, the water's going to go around it because the vast majority of beaches in that basin, seawalls are private. So it'll make us feel good. It'll make us feel like we really did something. But we will have done nothing, right? And that struck me, and that like stayed with me because I'm not a resiliency person, but I just want Doug to get up and write a board about resiliency. Like, what have we done in resiliency? Like, why is it that we don't speak with the urgency of what we know is coming? Why do we let people stand up or sit at this table and say things like the pier doesn't go underwater when we have storms? Or it's okay if we don't have a pier, or if it breaks down, or we do things. I mean, we say that and then we just move on, as though that doesn't itself present just a huge issue to this town. We don't need a board. We can do in double digits the amount of money that we spent in resiliency. So right, there's another failing. The select board's awful. We're awful. Town staff, you're awful. There is no shortage of things that we have to do, and we have to, at every avenue, do them in parallel tracks. I appreciate you talking about, David, you talking about the housing authority, and people will say, well, it's the housing authority. That's not town. That's actually a different entity. That's actually a state entity. That's not town money. The town didn't subsidize those. The town doesn't take care of those. The town has no legal obligation whatsoever to those properties. It's just called the Swampscott Housing Authority, except for the fact that we have 150 residents plus living in places that I guarantee no one in this room would want to live. The fact that no one comes up at public comment and says, every meeting, housing authority, housing authority, housing authority, or no one comes up and says resiliency, 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 or doesn't come and say we need more affordable housing, or heck, I've been the one showing up saying pedestrian safety, pedestrian safety, pedestrian safety. The fact that they don't show up, the fact that someone in the audience pounds on the table when they like what one select person says, that's not the reason we do things. It just can't be the reason we do things. It is hard. We would love to please everybody here. Tell us your issue. Put it in a box. We'd love to do it all. Tell us which one it is.
You didn't listen.
We have to, no one here is wrong with their priorities. No one is. You're right. No one here is wrong with priorities. We put more money into sewer infrastructure than anything else in infrastructure in the town of Swampscott on the town side in the last decade. More money in sewer infrastructure, right? We just did. And I just can't see how we're going to just, because we have one item right now that needs money, and honestly, Doug, I appreciate you doing this. I don't think anybody's ever done that, but it's on the wall there. I don't know about all these projects on this list, so I'm not validating everything projects on this list here, but I also want to empower staff to be doing these things because staff needs to be doing these things. Because none of us have the handle of what everybody wants, right? And no matter how hard we hit the table or speak out, none of us do. And our jobs are the suckiest in the sense that we have to balance all these things. No one here is wrong. Mary Ellen's not wrong. Katie, you're not wrong. Doug's not wrong. David, Sean, I'm not wrong. We all have things. And I just think as though we've got to, I really Again, I don't know about some of these, but I trust town staff to advance it. I appreciate the focus on resiliency more than any on this issue here. You know, this weekend, someone at a soccer game came up to me and said that same fence at Upper Jackson's broken. Sorry, the same bench. Same bench. It was broken last year, too, and Gino, I think, fixed it. But apparently it probably needs to be really fixed. And I was like, well, who do I call? Like, people always come up to us. You guys get people like that, too, right? Saying, this fence is wrong, this dog do here, as if you're going to turn around and pick up the dog do. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. Sometimes we do, right? But they come, this is the second time they come to the bench, and I'm like, this year I was like, last year I knew who did. I actually texted Sean the picture, and he sent it to Gino, right? But this year I'm like, I don't even know why, like, Gino's just trying to do the best he can. He, you know, I'm saying duct tape, right? It's not really duct tape, but, you know, we're just trying to do those things. And I've never seen in our time here where we're actually going to say, hey, let's put several $100,000 to making just repair and maintenance to parks to make them safe. Things that have just fallen out of safety. Fences that no longer have the metal rod on top of them, so you literally have metal fence on, things like that. I just, you know, this isn't a perfect list. I'm not saying it's a perfect list, but I can't, I agree with Doug in his presentation of the fact that we are taking care of business and do have a plan in place. It's not a perfect plan. It's not going to be nearly fast enough to do it, but none of these are fast enough. We are in 2024, and we haven't spent more than $100,000 on resiliency as a seaside community. You want to talk about being behind? I would give anything for those dollars on resiliency. Any of them. Give me 10% of the dollars. We are a seaside community, and we've done nothing. So I appreciate, Doug, you making the motion you made.
Thanks.
And with that, I will be voting favorably for it.
Okay. Additional thoughts, comments?
Kitty, you asked a question about resiliency. I don't know if you really wanted, if I'm recalling correctly, I don't know if that was something that you were asking for an actual answer for or not.
Well, I think it's important if the motion carries that people know what we're spending the
Yeah,
ARPA funds
right.
on. So yeah, I think it's important
Yeah.
that we discuss it.
Yeah. So this is the same thing that we talked about last week, just as a refresher. And, you know, there was some discussion then about whether or not this would go in capital or not. But I think, you know, Sean, you've kind of, you know, it seems like sorted things out between this and capital. So the point of this is that there's been a multi-party group working for the last couple months through what our resiliency efforts need to be. And we know we have vulnerabilities, you know, all along our coastline, from Kings all the way up to Preston, with probably, you know, and maybe some people will quibble depending on where they live, but maybe the biggest probably at Fisherman's to Eisman's. Although I'm sure people at Kings that get flooded there will feel as though that's very critical, and I certainly appreciate that too. So we've been meeting with Marzi, with Kleinfelder, meeting with Coastal Zone Management, with the Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness folks, and really trying to get input from them about grants we've done in the past that we've been successful with and not successful with, and how do we actually move this forward. And it's very competitive, as you can imagine. We're not the only seaside town, and there's limited funds, so there's got to be very competitive here. So without getting to all the nitty-gritty, we've come to a consensus, I think a strong consensus, that we need to update our models. The last time we did this was in 2016, the famous Kleinfelder Coastal Climate Change Report. There's new models that didn't take into consideration various things, didn't take into consideration precipitation models. So we're bringing all of that together under a proposal that will come before the select board next Wednesday, because it definitely will be a grant over $50,000 in the new policy. And they would basically look at in detail what are all the different resiliency mitigation strategies we can take, everything from out in the water, the living reef idea, to higher walls, to closable gates, to raising roads, to managed retreat. All of these things will be on the table. Nothing will be off the table. And the state just as kind of a heads up to everyone, the state is leaning more and more and more towards, you gotta think towards 2050, you gotta think towards 2070, you gotta think that the seas are getting higher no matter what you do about keeping the temperature down to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Seas are gonna get higher. I know some people here have been saying this to me very clearly. Don't come back to us with some tinkering, because we're not gonna basically fund you if you tinker. We need big strategic moves, thinking long-term about the people that live right along the water. It's not so clear that's gonna be a viable strategy for 30 years, 40 years from now. So that's the scope of what we need to look at in all ways. Community input, engagement is a big piece of this. The businesses, the residents that live in that area, it's gonna be a major, major outreach to folks there. Outreaching to the regulators to understand what is really feasible as part of this process, and ideally, after another year and a half, getting this grant. And if we get the grant, we're not gonna need $200,000. This is basically to say, we have to do this work no matter what. Ideally, we get the grant, it pays for the vast majority of it. If it doesn't, we have the money allocated to do the work no matter what. So ideally, we get the grant, that frees up some money, but that's kind of the general gist of what this money would be devoted toward.
I just want to add one thing I've had a chance to go on to some of the state meetings, just to listen to how they're talking about. For the first time ever, the state is talking about losing land to flooding, meaning affirmative policy decisions to say, we can't flood abate this, so therefore we're going to spend the money on relocating people. Right? I mean, I just want to say that again. Like in Massachusetts, the state is finally talking about the fact that there are certain areas that no matter what they do, what we do, the cost-benefit analysis doesn't merit the investment, that it's time to relocate. And there are portions of our town that are low-lying, right? That I'm just saying that we've got to get ahead of this. And it's not just talk. Talk to the people in Revere about whether or not they think it's just talk. Go to Revere and talk to residents in Revere today about whether or not they think the state is just talk about it. Because it's a real live discussion in communities, and we're not exempt from it. And the fact, I think we were talking about the fish house the other week when we talked about the pier, and I think I meant, well, we're going to have to raise the pier, and all of a sudden there was a gasp of raising the pier. Not raise the pier, raise the fish house. We're going to have to raise the fish house. There was a gasp. Oh my God, you're not going to raise the fish house. You're just going to build a wall around it. And like, no, we're going to be raising the fish house. If you want the fish house to stay, there isn't a resiliency person around that's going to tell us something different. Now, do I know that for certain? No, but high probability, yeah. We're raising the fish house. Not romantic. It doesn't fit our vision. It doesn't fit what we want. We love the fish house where it is, as is, and stuff like that. But there's just certain realities that we have to grow to accept. We need outside resources to help us to grow to accept these things because they are foreign to us. We are not. When Neil Duffy was on the board, we were lucky to have one of the best in the state sitting on a board with us, but we don't have that. And so we need those resources because that is the future. It's just a question of how we want to deal with it and when we want to deal with it. I'd rather deal with it before the fish house is half in the Atlantic Ocean. And so I think, Doug, that's what you're talking about here. And it's a small down payment. This doesn't do anything. I don't want to get anybody comfortable with $200,000 for resiliency, but it unleashes all the other stuff that we don't even know what it is. And so you've been very focused on it since your arrival here, so I appreciate that.
Additional comments, questions? Okay, we can move to a vote on the motion from Mr. Thompson, seconded by Mr. Spelios. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. So we'll move on to the town warrant.
Is there not a second motion made by Mr. Thompson about?
I kind of passed on that because we deal with it in the capital.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll move on to the town warrant for May 20th, 2024.
Can I ask, what is our meeting schedule between now and the time that we have to close the warrant, just so we know, like, what level of closure are we trying to bring? I think the answer is whatever we can close, that's awesome. But like, what's our real schedule look like between now and the 29th of April, which is the date that warrant needs to be closed?
Yeah, understood. So I was planning on having a meeting next Wednesday in order to finalize anything that we cannot address this evening.
Okay.
In which case, then are we assured that Finance Committee, because I think we're holding back on a lot of stuff for them to kind of opine, that they'll have to be meeting before that, right?
Well, I think it's likely we're not going to be able to, if history is an indication of the future, we're not going to be able to recommend in the printed warrant. It's going to be a supplemental for a lot of these things, because I don't believe FinCom's
Ever
gonna-
hopeful, Peter.
I know you are. I appreciate that. I appreciate
Yeah,
What's the schedule for FinCom?
I don't know when the FinCom is meeting next. I know CIC is meeting on Monday. I anticipate that FinCom will be meeting next week, but I can get back to the board on that. I was in touch with the chair of the Finance Committee earlier this week.
Oh, FinCom, it looks like FinCom has a meeting tomorrow evening at 7 o'clock. Agenda,
But I think that
public comment, review, and potential votes. or-
Did we kind of conclude, though, I think I'm saying this as a question, even though there's no, did we conclude that, as to what were in and out, if you will, for articles anyway? So now it was more the details of the articles that were remaining. So for example, a dollar amount on a revolving account or something, maybe is outstanding, but as to the articles themselves, we had resolved as to what.
Yes, I think we had a pretty good consensus. There was some information about, the school stabilization accounts. I did reach out to the superintendent and the school finance director, and, we are still working through some discussions about how we can fund those. I did get a commitment from the school finance director that they will not spend any of the funds in these stable accounts for anything but for the purposes, either for the utilities or for special education. We'll develop an MOU that hopefully would help the board be comfortable. I think we still feel as though those stabilization accounts would help support the district, especially during a year where we're building a new school and we have new energy systems, and, that said, we can come up with a recommendation to utilize free cash if the board is really intent on not supporting those type of stabilization accounts.
Do you mind, in some ways, it's kind of counter to what I've said in the past, I recognize that, but can we just go through them in order
Sure.
again, and like check them off and say like, we're done with them?
Yeah,
Pending
love
like,
to.
Finance Committee, just so like,
Can I just ask one question? Where is the retirement, the article that the retirement board sent in?
We have not voted on that.
But it's not in here.
It's not in here. I can
I
put
know
it
we
back
haven't
in
voted on
here.
it, but I can't even find it to vote on it.
Oh, I've never seen it.
Right, so how come it's not here?
Oversight.
Well, but who's asking it to be included?
The retirement board, and so I sent it in and asked to have it included in
So
here.
next Wednesday, we have to look at it. I mean, can you send out the language?
I can.
We had this presentation.
yeah, that was what I thought. I thought we weren't even, it wasn't even, I know we got the language, but there was no supporting information at all about it. I thought that's what we
Yeah.
were waiting for from them, and that led to, like, are they sure they definitely want to do it?
Well, I think there was a conversation last week about this exact
Yeah.
thing, and you, I think, said that they said they were going to submit something, or you've asked them to submit something. And if
I
not,
did. I asked for a lot of information, typical, the same information that we ask every time, like what are peer communities doing? Where are we with,
So can you
you
just have that, so Mary Ellen, you're asking for is next
I will
Wednesday,
put
can
it
we
back
have
in.
that?
Yep.
Or if they want to come
Well,
for.
but did you reached out to them? Are you saying you reached out to them?
I've reached out to our finance director and the director of the retirement board, and I've shared information with them that, typically we ask for a lot of.
Since Mary Ellen gave you this warrant article, though, that's what I think she's asking about.
Late March.
Have you asked it
Yes.
recently as a result of that? Regardless, we got to get it.
Probably
'Cause-
3 weeks ago, I asked for that information.
So let's get it, and if you need to have a presentation, have a I've never seen it included without the presentation. So,
Can that be circulated?
Sure.
You have the language, right?
I do.
okay.
Was the language vetted by council? I thought that was the other issue.
I don't know, personally.
I believe I did send that to council, but I will.
We have a reply?
Let's double check.
Yeah, let's.
Article 1, Okay, Article 2, approve bills of prior fiscal years. Sean, this number does differ by $27,000.
Is Amy with us tonight? She is.
Amy is not with us.
She's right there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, everyone, it's Patrick. I have the information on that I can share from Amy.
Great.
Yeah, so the updated amounts are the line for Keyspan and Mass Electric. These are utilities. We talked about these before. The difference arises from the fact that we've continued our reconciliation with National Grid on a number of our accounts, and we need to get a transfer from free cash for the gross amount that is owed on a number of accounts, and then we will be refunded credits on a number of other accounts. So originally we put the net number in the warrant. We're just putting the gross number that needs to be paid out in the warrant so that it's accurate for accounting purposes. But we will be getting back $28,300 in refunds. So the net is $54,200 to the general fund, but that's the difference. That's what's changed.
Is that for Keyspan? Is Keyspan separate from Mass Electric?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
Right.
all National Grid, but it's
all
gas and electric accounts. Separate.
So, but this needs to really be clear, because if you're saying Keyspan, you have 18.5 here, and then you have Mass Electric, 64, and then Hudson Energy, who's Hudson Energy?
That's a electrical contract for a school building, so they purchase power through a separate provider.
But at the night of, but we have to have actual numbers the night of town meeting.
But I think he's saying we do have actual numbers. It's just that when we pay these numbers, we are actually going to get 28,000 and change back because it unleashes it. But we have to pay the bill of 214,210.
Right.
Exactly.
And there's going to be a net of 28 back to us. That would fall to free cash, I
That's
assume?
fine. I just want to make sure the language is right.
Yep.
Okay, so we feel like this one's done. Just Finance
Yes.
Committee has to opine.
Yes.
but- Right?
Yes, so to say the select board will report at town meeting.
Okay.
Okay. Article 3,
Same with Article 3.
Or at town meeting.
town meeting.
So we don't, just for my education, Finance Committee is going to scrutinize the operating budget. They've been going through that process.
Right.
We'll get the results of that from them likely next week, or this will happen like after it's printed, and we'll really digest and make any tweaks or whatever sometime in May, after it's printed.
Most
Typically,
likely
that's
the
what
latter. Yeah, most likely the latter.
Yeah, okay.
So is there a reason why we wouldn't make a recommendation on Article 2 this evening?
Because we wait for.
Because we don't
FinCom.
have it.
Because we
Because
typically on
FinCom
finance, but we do it for Article 2, we do. We wait for FinCom.
We'll wait for FinCom.
Typically to make the recommendation.
Yeah. All right. We struck Article 4, so we'll just have to renumber a little bit. Article 5 is the establishment of a utility stabilization fund. Sean?
Again, that's something that I'm working with the school district on. They have been clear that they would prefer to advance these stabilization funds, develop an MOU that perhaps the board and the school committee can sign. We've done those previously that would have specific language about who would be authorized to expend funds out of these accounts if the board was inclined to be the spending authority. That could be the board. I would recommend it be the town administrator and the superintendent, just because we don't want to politicize these decisions. But, if there's a concern about just control, this allows us to keep these funds outside of the operating budget and just kind of ensure that we're being very careful about how we make these decisions.
So I would just suggest that if you're going to include this, it'll outlive me here, that an MOU is seen by the board before town meeting so that it's understood how this fund will be administered. Because I think, from my perspective, I care less about if it's you and the superintendent, as long.
So I don't know that arises to the need of a stabilization fund. to sort of put a solution on a problem that's only 18 months of an issue.
This is the conversation we had last week, isn't it?
It is, yeah, but I don't think we ever got clarity on
okay.
whether
So again,
it is
I
actually
think that-
intended to be
Yeah.
more of a Band-Aid for a longer issue, and if that's
So-
the case, then let's just say that's
So
the
this conversation started well before the elementary school. In Sean's and Pam's, I sat in tri-chairs where their conversation with different chairs of the committee and stuff like that started this conversation years ago before the elementary school. I'm just gonna go back to Sean. I think that I'm personally not opposed to it staying for now, and we're not making a recommendation, but I just,
Yep.
MOU. If you would want my support for it, which again, my support's gonna be irrelevant, I would want to know what the rules are and give me examples of what in the last 6 years have you seen where you would have used it if you had it? And look, I'm sure there's examples. You've solved it.
Right.
And so I don't want to diminish the need for it because you solved it. Tell us what those ideas were or something. I think is what would be helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so a draft MOU can be circulated to the
Absolutely.
board
Yep.
tomorrow?
No, well, he has to do
he has
it with the superintendent.
Yeah.
Well, no, but there.
I'd have to work out this with our finance teams on the town and school side, but certainly by Monday.
Monday, got it. Okay, that works.
Well, just so you know, the superintendent's out this week and the finance director for the school is back tomorrow. So that doesn't leave a lot of time for that.
Okay.
How about
I'm just
by next
trying to set,
Wednesday?
I'm just trying to set realistic expectations. You
Yeah.
guys have
Fair enough.
another month
No,
before
no.
town meeting. So, but
Monday.
And Katie, that approach does meet your
Oh,
concerns?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have an answer yet, because, I mean, I guess if we come to the table and say in the last 6 years, this is the MOU, and in the last 6 years, this is how this would have been triggered under the MOU, and this is how we're planning on utilizing it going forward, to me, it feels like, okay, well, then it becomes more necessary to have a funding mechanism, a stabilization fund that does that. But if we're saying that this is for Hadley because it's going to be an empty building, and then for a period of time needs to be
Right.
paid, the utilities need to be paid outside of the budget before it sort of gets into the control of the hotel company and the investors, I get that piece. But it doesn't make sense to me to create a whole stabilization fund for a very unique problem.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that if they're saying the stabilization fund is actually not a unique problem, let's be just clearer about it. And let's say these are the triggers for it, and this is why we will use it going forward, so that people aren't shocked when we're using it going forward, that it's used in that way.
So can I make a recommendation then, if this isn't going to be resolved by next week when we close the warrant, if perhaps the town administrator can talk to town council and make sure the language and work with the moderator to make sure the language that's here is broad enough that if there was a floor motion that said, instead of creating the revolving account, it instead appropriated a fixed sum, a one-time fixed sum, which is also something we talked about last
Right.
week. We just want to make sure the floor motion would be appropriate, given what the underlying warrant article was. So this language may need to be tweaked to give town council and the moderator comfort that if a floor motion was to change, to then just, because we'd still be, it sounds like, open to appropriating what they need for this year.
Yeah.
To make sure that we could do that on the floor and not run afoul of parliamentary problems on the floor. So if you can,
Absolutely.
you can check on that.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that note. Thanks.
We're flying.
All right, Article 6, rescind opioid settlement, special purpose fund, and approve transfer to free cash.
I'm just relying on this just being a technicality, basically, right?
Housekeeping.
And Article 7.
Yeah.
This is housekeeping. It just allows us to, be consistent with state and federal law regarding these opioid funds.
So 7 is just transferring the exact same,
That's right.
Can we
although the numbers are
consider
the same.
these articles together?
We can likely, when we make a motion at town meeting, the moderator can consolidate these, but I think, leaving them individually in here will add clarity, and we can explain this at town meeting.
Okay.
I hate to do this, but the numbers aren't the same. You got 102,000 in one, and then 123 in the other. That maybe is right.
Hi, it's Amy.
Hi.
The numbers are different. So the 123 that you see in the first article was the money that we received in FY23 that fell to free cash. And then the money in the second article that you see is the money that has come in FY24 to the special purpose fund that was established. So both of those monies now need to go into the special revenue fund.
Okay.
And is the total 123?
The total would be that
It's
123 plus.
123 for free cash, and then
102.
I don't have it in front of me.
102, 842 and 32 cents.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Amy. All right,
You're welcome.
we'll move on to Article 8, approve transfer of Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings. Patrick?
We've gone through, so, do you want explanations on everything again? Because we've gone through the explanation. I think you just want to go through
Yeah,
to
we
make
don't-
sure.
yeah.
Well, I think
done.
Patrick may have final numbers this evening. Is that accurate?
These are the current numbers that we have, David.
Okay,
So
okay.
these are the numbers that we're working off of.
And are we waiting for the finance committee on these?
Yep.
Yes, they have not made a motion on these yet.
Yeah.
10.
Select board to report at town meeting. 10, approve transfer of free cash, special education reserve fund.
So that's gonna be similar to the conversation we just had on utilities. I'll get an MOU, I'll work with town council.
But we already have an MOU on this, don't we?
Yes.
We do.
Yeah. So, the same thing, just extending it, right?
We're adding some additional funds into the
Yeah.
account.
Same rules, same process,
It is,
just a refueling.
it is.
Don't say yes if it's not yes.
It is. There's nothing glamorous about this.
Okay, all right.
We're adding funds to ensure that we can meet our statutory obligations. There's really no mystery to this.
Okay, and the select board will report at town meeting?
Yeah.
All right. Article 11, amend general bylaw revolving funds, Andrew Chapel.
This is an opportunity to allocate a few dollars for,
We're not allocating.
We're not
anything.
allocating.
Oh,
we're
we're
just
not.
raising.
No, we're
Revolving
just
funds.
allowing
Establish
them to
a-
You're just
raise
testing
their-
us. You're just
yeah.
testing
a
us.
limit.
We got this.
We did,
We
yeah.
went over these. We don't need to.
We did, but Peter raised a good
No,
question.
well, this one's not the one I have the question
I
about. It's the
know.
next one I have a question
Right,
about.
right. So the next one, I would like to say, there's an extra zero in here. We're gonna make it 25, just like the Andrews Chapel.
Okay, then I don't have a question.
Your comments were taken into consideration, Mr. Spelios. Thank you.
So what happens in the event that the historic commission raises $150,000?
They actually have other avenues. There was a timing issue. They have other avenues for the funds that they're going to be collecting, so they wouldn't have to worry about taxes. These would be numbers that would come like straight from that.
Yeah.
And the numbers go up as you have more people in your household, you know, the numbers go up and up in terms of the level that you're exempt.
Thanks, Doug. Article 14, appropriation for Chapter 90 roadway improvements.
Generally, housekeeping, this is the amount of money that we are allocated through Mass DOT and the state legislature. So we usually get some detailed information on that.
Can I go back to Article 13 for a second, the CPA, and just talk for a second about whether or not we want to make a recommendation? I know that typically on financial things we do, but that's usually because there's both a source and a use. So it's about how we're spending the money, not just where we're collecting it. Here, it's about a policy of whether or not we think we should be adopting a new revenue source. And so I just think this kind of sits outside of, as a policy, does the board to finance committee say, look, if we think this is an important policy. So I think there's just more than just a financial consideration here. So I don't know that I have my own answer here, but I just.
Do you mean,
should we make a recommendation
to the finance
Yeah,
committee? then
no,
waiting?
no, I would just say right now, I would make a motion, hypothetically, I would make a motion for favorable action, to recommend favorable action. The board votes on it, yay, great, the board's now taking action. You can go to FinCom and say, not only these are the details, but as a policy matter, the board's already made its recommendation.
I think the only reservation I have on that is the percentage. Like if they came back and said the 1.5% was either maybe could be pushed higher or is too high.
Right.
But the CPA as a policy, I have no problem having an opinion on tonight. I just,
All right, so maybe then what we do is, since Doug's going to be the one representing us, if a majority of us feel as though we can support the concept of CPA, give you that tool to at least say the majority of the board supports CPA as a concept. Just so you have something to be able to articulate.
Yep.
Because it is a major policy. It's not just a financial widget. It's
Yeah.
a policy change. So I would be comfortable with that, and I agree with Katie's statement about that.
Okay, so
I am comfortable with
do I have a motion? Is there a motion on the floor?
maybe, does it need to be a motion? Can it just be a straw poll?
Okay, sure,
Yeah.
sure, it can be a straw poll. I'd be in favor.
I mean, I think I am supportive of the CPA as a policy. I think it's gonna be a tool in our toolbox going forward for some of these nice-to-have projects. You know, to be able to plan for them in the future instead of wish we had a way to pay for them as they're coming up. So,
I agree.
And I just want to listen to I haven't been able to attend your seminar.
There's more whiteboarding in that, just if you're
Well,
really looking
Much
that'll,
more.
that'll get me here early.
Mr. Thompson.
You'll sleep well,
Sorry for interrupting. So 14 you were on.
Yeah, 14, appropriation for Chapter 90 roadway improvements.
Yep, housekeeping, generally, we get the number in, we fill it in based on our roadway miles, but the 300,000 is a plug for,
It's a plug for the exact,
that's right, we'll get that sometime between now and town meeting.
got it.
I think, I don't know who's taking notes because Pete Kane's not on, but the comment just has a reference to project number 6 for the capital improvement, the CIC projects, but it might not be 6 anymore.
No, I think it's number 4 in this draft.
So just to keep
It
an
is,
eye on
yep.
that reference.
Thank you.
Right, so the 300,000 that's in here, let's say, is not purely just state funds. That is the combination of the state funds plus the 100 in capital?
No, that's the
No,
state,
this
the
is
state
Chapter
funds.
90.
Okay, so I'm not sure then why we're even
I'm not
referencing
sure why
it.
the reference does, but it is
Yeah.
what it is. I agree with you.
I think it was just there, someone had made a recommendation that there's some additional paving money, and we should let people know about that.
Someone?
And be completely transparent.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So is there any
I'm
reason?
happy
we
to delete it, though.
No, it's fine. Whatever.
Okay.
Just
I
keep
mean-
track of it.
So is there any reason that we can't take a vote to recommend favorable action on Article 14 this evening?
Do we have to wait on the finance committee?
Well, we don't have to wait.
I mean, we
To
don't
accept
have- I guess we do.
to accept and appropriate $300,000 of state funds?
No, I'd make
You're gonna say no?
I'm good with it.
I'd make a motion to recommend favorable action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Woo-hoo, all right.
5-0. Appropriation for recommended capital projects.
All right, so I have a updated recommendation handout. If the board wanted to take a look at that, I'm recommending that we remove a number of projects, but also increase funding for one project. So just stepping through, after discussion with town staff, we have sufficient funding for the design of the town pier. We're looking at getting to a 60% level, and I'm recommending that we remove the $266,000 that we're requesting. We have grant funds, and we just don't need those dollars this year.
The 53,000, we're not gonna need the match or anything?
We won't. We actually have some additional funds that we can use for that match. Additionally, there's a warrant article for trail design and construction. In the warrant, it really was redundant, so we won't need that $150,000.
Borrowing mechanism, we're still going to receive the full value of the grant?
We are.
Okay.
Yep. As we go through the warrant, there is,
Yeah, there's one for 225, actually, for the trail,
Yep.
right?
Article 25 has 225,000, that we have to gross appropriate those funds, but, that will help address our statutory requirement for that grant.
Okay.
Number of resiliency projects, we have the Islands Beach seawall and Stacy's Brook outfall tidal gate, both for $320,000.
Sean, I know you're just reading out the ones you changed, but just for the record, I want to say,
Oh, yeah.
the MS4 permit money is here, right?
Sorry, there's 180.
So if the MS4 permit is in the capital budget, but as Doug so clearly displayed, we could get, where are they? Sewer enterprise fund money or other loans. Why are we spending it through capital again?
Yeah, I think, right. I mean, the question is, why are we taking $50,000 of ARPA
Is
to
it a
pay for
time
this?
matter? Because like, this is
Like,
gonna put
that
the
just
money up
seems like,
front and we're gonna be able to spend it faster so that the projects can.
Why are
get-
we using ARPA funds?
No,
For that 50?
no.
Yeah, there's an answer for that.
I'm sorry, I thought that was the question. Like, why would we
No.
not do it all with
I
the
mean,
sewer
yes, I guess
costs?
they're interrelated, right? So there's $50,000 in ARPA, and there's $182-ish thousand in the capital budget. But then there's all these other funding mechanisms, which we already talked about, which are gonna solve all the problems. So why aren't we using them to solve those two problems? So if we could just be specific
Sure.
about that.
So, as you know, there's lots of people that want us to move fast. I reached out to our technical team, and with the support of the board's utilization of ARPA funds, tomorrow, we can actually get busy doing some of the IDDE work for Fisherman's Beach. We won't have to wait until July 1st. That 2 months of time can help us expedite some of the construction coordination and help us be more efficient with how we're planning remediation. There may be opportunities for us to detect an illicit discharge over the next few weeks and just advance some of that work.
So that $50,000?
In ARPA. And that's why we can reduce this number by 50,000, but we still have an entire town that we have to look at, and the rest of these dollars are gonna be part of that just ongoing ministerial work that we just have to support every year under the Clean Water Act.
So I'm not
Sure,
sure if
so
you guys
that-
heard, so that went
that
down to 131 now.
This is now down to 131?
Right, because
That's right.
50 came out.
131,896.
Continue.
And the reason we're spending 131 out of the capital budget instead of any other mechanism other than ARPA is because of timing.
No,
also.
but this is, the capital budget has all these mechanisms within it, Katie. So this is, we're borrowing, so this is gonna, so it says borrowing here, it says G, I don't think you mean G, I think you mean sewer enterprise.
Oh, okay, so that's
So when
important.
we say borrowing, it's a catch-all for all the different things. What the town administrator and staff need to do is update the parentheticals to
Yeah.
G, S, and W, depending on which, is it gonna be general fund, sewer enterprise, or water enterprise?
Okay.
Type of thing.
Okay, so we are actually getting this money from the sewer
Exactly.
enterprise fund.
Yeah, so sewer
Okay.
enterprise fund.
Got it. Thank you.
Your question's a good question, because it's confusing how it's written here.
Yep. Project number 4 is chapter,
No, I don't think you were just talking about
Yeah.
the changes. You
okay,
talked
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that's great.
I dragged you into that one
Yep.
because of the conversation.
All right, great, thanks, Doug. So Stacy's Brook, outfall tidal gate, there's just more work that we need to do, and frankly, we want to study these projects are in the capital plan. We'll take a little bit more time and try to help prioritize that. So we're going to jump all the way down to project 30. This is where you'll see the more aggressive work for Kings Beach and Fisherman's. That's 1.8 and 1.7 million. We indicated to the EPA and DEP that the town will seek more funding back in December. I had emailed EPA officials saying that we would look at strategies to fund more aggressive investments in remediation. This $3.5 million does reflect that. We did look at some analysis on rates. The town treasurer has looked at our rate schedule. As we've mentioned a number of times, out of the 56 communities in MWRA, we're not an MWRA community, but all these communities are in Greater Boston. We were the 46th lowest in sewer rates. And so there's room for us to kind of race towards the middle. We're not looking to be the highest. We certainly don't want to be the lowest. By bonding for $3.5 $5 million. This would essentially mean that there'd be a $22.68 per quarterly bill, or $90 roughly a year for the average sewer rate. And I realize that, we don't want to see any of these increases, but, this would be a reasonable approach to address some of these serious issues.
Have these been presented to CIC yet?
These have not.
Okay, so you're going to present these to CIC?
They're meeting on Monday. I've asked the town treasurer to present these, and I'll be available Monday morning to go over these recommendations.
So I put it up on the board, and I already expressed my opinion about this. Like, I don't see the need for this right now. I'm all for doing it when it's necessary, but the 1.8 additional for Kings that's in here, I don't know where that's gonna go, frankly. So if we're gonna allocate it, and maybe we'll spend it in a couple years from now when we need it, I get that, but I just don't want us to like go and bond this and actually be spending money that we're not gonna be using right away.
We can use it, and I've worked with the technical team, and next week, we're gonna come in and we're gonna have a presentation by Kleinfelder, and we're gonna talk a little bit about some of these additional aggressive efforts that will help the town do our best to manage our status of good repair. I've said this many times to, repeat it, but I'm gonna say it again. We could spend millions, we're still gonna have a problem, and that's why we'll be more aggressive, but I'm gonna be more aggressive at looking at supplemental strategies, because if we wanna use that beach in our lifetime, we're gonna need a supplemental strategy.
So all this money is dedicated towards cleaning pipes for cleaning beach?
Leaving
Or
pipes,
it's not about the broader asset management work?
no, this is Kings Beach.
But, no,
But is
Kings
it
Beach, but
IDD
IDDE.
work, or is
Heating
it?
pipes, what he's trying to differentiate is the greater Stacy Brook analysis that's going on. None of this money is being used for that.
That's right.
Okay. All right, so I don't think we have a,
Diane, is it possible that we can pull up the warrant that we're talking about? I think members of the public are having just a difficult time following, so I should have, thanks,
you're gonna need to share.
apologies.
You can-
And just to make my position extremely clear, I'm all for doing as much as we possibly can in a reasonably, financially reasonable way. I'm just not quite clear how we actually spend this money next year. So that's all.
But we'll
I
have
guess we'll get that answer next week.
We'll have additional
Yeah,
clarification.
but, I mean, I'm gonna reinforce Doug's point, like, the second it's in here, and we're gonna set water and sewer rates, you guys are gonna set water and sewer rates next month, it's gonna be based upon a budget which is gonna carry a debt service for this $3.5 million. So if you don't spend it, and I know you're not issuing the bond, so this is where there's a disconnect. We're not actually incurring the interest expense, but the resident is incurring the expense in this bill. Maybe it'll true up next year, but that makes residents' bills choppy.
Understood.
And I know you know that to keep it smooth, so I think the important thing that you heard tonight is, let's be doubly sure, but then if we are spending it, we're spending it on sewer sleeving and IDDE, and not on, this 3.5 is not for other purposes.
Absolutely. I will double check, and we'll have a comprehensive presentation on Kings Beach and Fisherman's Beach and some of the other asset management updates that.
Yeah, if you could do that May 1st, that would be awesome.
I think one thing I just really don't want to gloss over is the fact that between two articles, which we're supporting in this warrant potentially, we're increasing the yearly payments from average taxpayers by almost $200, which doesn't seem like a lot, but in the current climate, it is. And so, I mean, I just want to highlight that and say, like, we don't take it lightly. I mean, the CPA is something that I support for those nice-to-haves going forward, that we won't have the funds to fund going forward, because as the budgets get tighter, as our financial fiduciary responsibilities get tougher, we just are not going to have the wiggle room to pay for some of these things. And this provides us a future for that. But I know it's asked and answered, but I mean, I just want to be very cognizant of the fact that we are putting an additional burden on taxpayers to pay for this issue, so just want to say.
So again, I just want to chime, I appreciate you saying that. I do hope that this board will, at some point, maybe in the future, define what nice-to-haves are. I think there are a lot of people that would, I think there'll be a lot of colorful conversation to figure out what a nice-to-have is. I think there's very little, and I think if Nancy Schultz was here, she would say historic preservation, protecting our history is not a nice-to-have. If it was a nice-to-have, I'm not sure every member on this board would support it the way they have. I think that the Affordable Housing Trust, if they were here, would say affordable housing is a nice-to-have, and I think the Open Space Committee, if they're here, saying open space, and I know that's not what you meant, but I'm just saying we should engage in a community-wide conversation on that, because we're going to get trapped in vernacular, which everybody defines it their own way.
Sure.
And so instead, and I think we've maybe been, and myself included, been inartful at times in using it, because then people throw it back at us and using the nice-to-have things and say, great, so show me a town that doesn't have open space. Show me a town that, you know, and we have to do all of them. It's really a question of degrees as opposed to must versus nice.
Yeah, I mean, but what isn't, I think we can all agree that $200 is nice to have for a taxpayer. So they could find a million ways to spend it, and that's their business. And I think in these tough financial times, that's a big deal for some people. And we should be talking about creating some sort of conversation so that people can say what their nice to haves are.
Yeah, and I just have to hasten to add, I mean, Peter beat me to the punch about the kind of nice to have, but also on CPA, everybody's going to have a voice on that. Everyone that wants to come out and vote in November, if we make it there, past town meeting, they'll have a voice on that, right? And there's a massive number of people that are exempt, as we talked about, which is very important to me. It doesn't mean everybody that's, you know, making $125,000 and lives in a $750,000 house here is going to be, it's going to be easy for them to do that extra $100. Totally get that. And that people have their voice to be able to speak on that, right? People have spoken very clearly that getting these beaches cleaned up is very important. So, you know, whatever the number was, I actually missed what Sean said.
$90 a year.
You know, that's what it's going to take to make sure that we have that. You know, it's not a nice to have, right? People say it's a critical thing, so it's going to be important for people to recognize that does cost money. You could say we could do it a different way and it wouldn't cost money, but then the other things that we said we would do in another way, they would have cost money. So one way or another, it's still all the same thing.
All right, so that brings us to a total bottom line for the capital projects of $7,121,991.
Which I assume is within our constraints and capital plan and.
Yep.
I have, I'm sorry, to go backwards one more second. The funding source. If the funding source changes on any of the, like, how tied are we to that? Because I have a couple more questions about this 3.5 million, the funding source piece of it. Like, but.
On what, for the sewer?
For the sewer. Because the S means that it's coming from. Sewer funds. But then what,
We can't commit to funds that we don't have. There's other funds that we can apply to get that are not town-controlled funds, are some of the ones that are being talked about in the whiteboard demonstration that we don't have.
Okay.
But until we have those, sewer is the only.
So we allocate that money under sewer, but perhaps would pursue other avenues.
Well, like the
perhaps
state
not.
revolving fund, if that's what you're
Yeah.
referring to, that would still flow through the sewer enterprise fund.
Okay.
Right, but it's a different mechanism for
It's a different
borrowing.
mechanism for borrowing.
Right. But we have to make that decision now.
No, no, not at all.
It's done by an application.
And
Grants due in August.
we have some catch-up to playing there anyways to get and
Okay,
do that.
great.
Okay. Good questions. Article.
So again, we're kind of like sending this to
Yes.
Finance Committee with our kind of general agreement with this, but they have to come back and actually give the recommendation first before we literally give our recommendation. Is that like
Yes.
kind of like the CPA? Is that what we're doing here?
Yes.
But
Well-
when is CIC gonna talk about it?
The meeting
Monday.
Monday
Next week.
at 9 o'clock.
But FinCom's gonna meet before that, right?
CIC.
Yeah, but it's, again, this is like the operating budget. Chances are it gets supplemented before town meeting. So I mean, it's not best practice, but it's historically
Yeah.
what's happened.
I think Katie's point was that I said finance committee next, it's actually gotta be
Yes,
CIC
CIC 's
next.
gonna-
And then,
Yeah.
Order of operations. All right, we have zoning articles.
I would move favorable recommendation for Article 17. It's a technical correction to the ADU statute or
Yep.
bylaw.
What about 15?
Sorry.
Missing. No, 15 was the,
That's the FY '24 capital supplement.
That's this one that we just went over, no?
You're waiting on.
No, FY '24
No,
supplement.
I'm sorry. I think we're just waiting for,
Oh,
we're waiting for,
I think we were all fine with that, but again, I guess we have to wait for finance.
yes.
yes.
Has CIC seen this one, Sean, this supplement for FY '24?
I don't know. I will,
No, they
I believe it.
I'm guessing they have. This has been in there since day one.
No, but this is supplement, Peter.
No, I understand,
Okay.
but it's been in the warrant
Been in
since
the
day
warrant
one.
since
Oh, the
day one.
warrant.
So I'm guessing Patrick's the one that interfaces with them. Patrick, are you still with
Yeah,
us?
I can confirm they've discussed those projects in their process.
And they've blessed them?
Yes, they were included in their
CIC
plan.
did,
CIC
not
did,
Right.
not
FinCom.
FinCom.
Yep.
okay,
So now we're on FinCom, okay.
okay. Select board to report.
So, I was second.
So Article
There's
17,
motion
I'm-
To support Article 17.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain because I don't know, I haven't looked up on this, I haven't gone to any of their meetings yet.
I did attend this, and yeah, I'm an aye on that as well.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Mary Ellen. Article 18, amend zoning bylaw liquor establishments.
I'm good with this. This was a,
So
Oh, this is the one next door.
I'm continually confused by the way they edited this. So the goal was to be able to say, because there's a provision which I drafted in 2009, so I recognize that it was back in my Jerry Falwell days, where we shouldn't be drinking alcohol within 200 feet of a school entrance. But there are other things that say nor a vehicle service station or gasoline filling station, right? But they delete liquor licenses, but then they delete. It feels as though the edits actually don't match what they wanted to do. So I just would, if we can maybe just not do anything on this tonight, just, Sean, I'm happy to jump on a call. It feels like the language is just technically not correct with what they want to do. They just wanted to strike, they wanted to allow liquor licenses within 200 feet of
garages and
a school. Well, not garages and service stations.
No.
That's actually not what they wanted,
Because it's
right? But
garages,
that's, so there's just
service
there's a
stations,
technical
and
problem with
liquor
this language.
establishments.
There's a technical problem with this language that just needs to, I don't have a problem with what they're trying to do. I just don't think they're actually doing it here.
All right. I will coordinate a call.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll take that up on the 24th. Article 19, amend zoning bylaws, non-conforming structures.
I would make a motion for favorable action on Article 19.
I would as well, and I can take a stab at simplifying this if anyone wants, which basically says that this came up through a recent process we went through. Basically, we're out of compliance with the state law. And this-
Case law. Yes. I think it's
Maybe even just the statute, but either way, this just brings us into compliance.
It does.
Okay, we have a motion. Is that a second, Doug?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 I'm gonna abstain.
Okay. 4-0, abstain. Got it. Thanks. Article 20, amend zoning bylaw, MBTA 3A zoning.
I'd make a motion for favorable action on this.
I will second it, but I think we should take a little bit of a pause just to make sure, like, this is not, this seems like, simple little language here. I mean, but we all know, like, what this is, right? It's the end of a long process, complying with this. And we've seen the maps in the areas in which, this would apply to. And, that has, real ramifications for people in different parts of town. I just want to make sure that we're not kind of like stumbling, into this. This is primarily Vinnon Square, right? And then a strip kind of along Essex Street, right?
Yep.
Right outside here. that this would apply, as of right, but it's not actually building even one unit of housing per state statute, but it does make it as of right to do multifamily housing. That's gonna be my, last soapbox of the night.
Why do I think we already approved this?
Well, we approved the maps, right? That was an interim step. But this is the actual language for.
So I'm fine holding off if you want to.
No, I just wanted to make sure that, we were kind of eyes wide open, there's been a lot of debate about this in some
Well, I think the
places.
planning board did a nice job in their
Absolutely.
discussion of it.
Completely open.
So if you haven't had a chance to hear that, it's worth it.
Wide open.
Wide. All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstaining.
Okay. All right. Article 21, amend general bylaw gas-powered leaf blowers.
So this is the first time we're seeing this enforcing language. Can you tell us, Sean, what community this enforcing language is based on?
Marblehead.
Thank you. And they passed it last year?
They
This is
did.
what they passed last year?
Town council has reviewed it, and that's the language, town council, I sent the Marblehead language to town council, they reviewed it and sent it back.
I'm not sure
Where
that's
is it?
quite exactly true, because you have the enforcing language here, but it also, there's language in here about prohibiting at all times. So we are now, unless I'm misreading this, we are not just talking about enforcing what we passed last year, which was from Memorial Day.
Yeah, I don't think
to
so.
Labor Day.
I guess that's my,
This,
I'm with you. I don't. So are you proposing that we're changing our bylaw to have it be prohibited all year round as opposed to summer? Because that's what this language says.
Yep.
Okay, no, that's, I'll make those technical changes.
It's not a technical change. That's a pretty big change. All right, so you're still, the ban again is still from basically Memorial Day to Labor Day.
That's correct.
Okay.
I would support that, for sure. At some future period, would I support actually making it year-round? Just to be clear, absolutely.
Yep.
But I do think that people deserve at least a year of kind of inculcating this into their business. The other question I had in reading this is, and I think we had a little discussion about this, who would be assessed the fine? Whether it was the homeowner or the business
Be
owner?
the homeowner.
Homeowner.
do you have a fine in yours?
It's on the next page. right?
300.
Okay, I
We-
got it.
Written.
Is that specified here, Sean?
On the next
Homework?
page, it's 300.
No, the 300.
the,
The
First
question is,
offense-
how do
first
you,
offense
reference
on
to
the
the
can you
bottom.
just follow up and get confirmation, so if XY Landscaping Company is the one using the loan, it's the homeowner, that's
You don't see.
Fine.
fine.
Right.
Yes, thank you for helping me. That's the word. Just let's double check that.
Sure.
Please.
And just, again, if we can confirm that's exactly what's happening in our next door neighbor is helpful, just because I think we share some of the same landscaping companies, and so therefore, the same set of rules applying seems to be helpful.
Yes. Okay, looks like we struck Article 20.
I'm sorry, I was going to make a motion for favorable action on Article 21
As amended.
as amended.
Do I have a
You
second?
want to wait?
I would like to
He
wait
wants to
to
wait,
understand the
sorry.
homeowner versus.
We're gonna wait.
That's fine.
Sorry.
24.
So homeowner versus what?
Versus landscape.
Landscaping company. Okay. We'll get that clarification and circle back next week. 22 was stricken, 23 was also removed. 24, acceptance of easements for public parking and sidewalks at Elm Place.
I would make a motion for favorable action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I would abstain, 'cause I really wanted to see the language on this before I voted on it, so that's why I'm abstaining again.
You mean language in addition to what's in front of you, or just the stuff that's in front of you?
The stuff from what the ZBA had approved.
Kind of to see the supporting documentation that led to
Right,
this.
mhm.
I do see actually in the comment,
There's an appendix to it also. I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
No, I'm looking
No,
for
they
I'm looking for the actual narrative from the ZBA.
in the comment,
You want the
Sean,
comprehensive permit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So maybe instead of voting on these where we keep having an abstention, we should just wait?
No, I think you're good with that. I just can't I can't
No, I
vote
get why,
without
yeah,
having
sure.
that.
No, I
but
get why.
If the majority is there.
Totally get why
Majority's there.
not
Yeah, but-
voting,
Yeah,
but.
I mean, so, I'm probably gonna 99.9% be a yes, but without
Right.
really knowing it and reading it.
I think that's Katie's point, like,
Yes,
then, you know, it's
that
just
is
a
my
timing
point.
thing, wait till next week.
Yeah.
So
You can
wait till
you're
next
on
week.
board or
That's fine.
not, you know,
Okay.
it's, you know.
Yeah, rather than, I mean, I think it's nice to have the will of all of us reflected, so if it's just a timing thing, we can just wait. We're gonna be back here next week
I agree.
anyways.
Yeah.
And Sean, what I was trying to say, in the comment, there's X number of public parking spaces that needs to be filled in.
It does.
Yeah.
Okay. Article 25, appropriation for land and water conservation fund grant.
So this is the grant that the town has received, and we have to gross appropriate funds, and we will have the grant.
So what's the net number to the town of Swampscott? The town's gonna be 30,000, and the grant's gonna be, and the grant's the rest, or what's the net? And if Patrick or Amy can answer that, if Sean doesn't.
Yeah,
53.
I've had a conversation with Marzi, so the total estimated project cost is the 225,000 that you see in the article.
Yep.
And the grant is a 50% reimbursement grant from the state, so $112,500 is grant funds, and the remainder would be general fund borrowing.
Thanks, Patrick.
Okay, I'm sorry then, that raises a question, because you zeroed this out, Sean.
No,
For
but he's doing it right here, though.
Yeah, because it was gonna be redundant.
It was redundant, that's why he's
Oh,
We're
zeroing
gonna
it
have
out.
to talk about it
Okay.
So it's
twice.
here instead.
Ah, okay,
And that's because the grant requires separate appropriation language.
okay. So are we clear in the comment that that's what's going on?
I'll add that language that the 112 will be offset.
And we'll have the select board report.
Yep.
Okay. Article 26, we don't touch, citizen petition. And then Article 27 will be a retirement board article, which we'll see language next week, and we'll make sure that that language is vetted by council.
That's right.
Okay. Anything additional on the warrant? Second. All right, select board time. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything.
I do have something.
Go ahead.
There's been a little bit of chatter about the Hawthorne process. I kind of reserved my comments about that the night that we first went over it. And yeah, I've been thinking a lot about this, hearing from a lot of people, as I'm sure all of us have. And I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts about it. One, because I've said to some people I would, and because I think it's, you know, I think there's more of a path forward here as people have digested this than maybe at first appeared. So I just want to acknowledge that, you know, there's been a lot of work done by town staff, by people in the community, by members of this select board, and, you know, it's amazing. It's almost 2 years since bought that property. There's been a lot of work done. Obviously, a lot of different opinions on what should be done. Everything from sell it to should be absolutely like, you know, Red Rock Park. And so there's a lot of work to do to kind of bring people together in that. I think we all have to acknowledge that town meeting did vote to acquire the property, thinking it would be largely, if not totally, open space. Town meeting doesn't necessarily, even though we love for it to think about it as a legislative body and representing people, yeah, I'm not so sure that's kind of like a perfect relationship there in terms of like being the representative. So it's important that what town meeting did. It's also important what the rest of the community thinks. I think we do need to really think about, I think as someone mentioned here tonight, I've heard it mentioned several times, ultimately, how do we get this to a place where something so iconic, such a major piece of town, really does have full ultimate town buy-in? People have mentioned literally having a townwide vote on this ultimately. I think if we lay out, I don't know if that's the right answer, but if we really lay out the steps in that, I think that will reassure people that, I think you all mentioned a lot the other night. This is a preliminary, this is a first step, this is kind of putting something on the table. And yet it looked pretty substantial, so even though you were saying it was preliminary, I think a lot of people took it in as like, oh, the fix is in, basically. We have to kind of like bring people back together. Some of the people who spoke at public comment today had some ideas about how to do that. I hope we'll take that into consideration. I do encourage people, if they haven't seen it, the report on the town website is much more detailed than what we were able to show. I assume that was what we'll go through next month with people, a much deeper analysis of what kind of went into that idea. And yet, still, there's a massive amount of frustration. In some ways, I do feel like we kind of, stubbed our toe in actually getting to potential approval of this because of the process. And I do think we need to kind of recalibrate now to kind of step back. I personally believe it's hard to believe that there's only one good option. I do think that, maybe after we have the demonstration and discussion in next month on everything that went into the thinking, it might be more obvious why that rose to the top. But I don't know that yet, and I think a lot of people don't know that. It does seem as though there should be more than one good option. So I just encourage us really to kind of take that to heart, all the feedback, really think about our process going forward. And it does feel to me as though, as I was reflecting on this, that we didn't use the Hadley reuse process for this, in the sense of it was a whole committee, right, with 3 branches for Hadley. It was a major piece of town property, and I wasn't really part of that, but a lot of people were involved. It really kind of got ground through, and the different options got used. I know at the end of the day, not everyone's happy with that too, but I do feel like it kind of did get processed in a semi-public way, much more so. I don't know if that's necessarily exactly the right next step here, but could be a way to kind of, is there a group that wants to go off and come up with, a different idea, and really kind of bring that forward? I'm not excited about taking another year to get to that first step, because we're paying for that puppy right now, right? The bonding money, like, we're paying for it. So I don't want to waste a lot of time, but I do feel like we do need to figure out a way to bring more people along. So I think that's, I think there's a lot of things in that final concept that I like, and actually we're very responsive to all the input. I know that the literal instance of a library kind of took people by surprise, but once you start like thinking about the elements of it, a lot of them, I think, were very much from the input. But maybe that final kind of assemblage of the pieces didn't quite hit the mark, or people weren't kind of brought along. So I'm probably saying a lot of what we all realize at this point, but I just want to kind of reflect that back to people, because I don't think we've really taken the time to share back what a lot of people have shared, at least with me, and I imagine with a lot of us.
Appreciate those points, Doug.
Thanks, Doug. Anybody else?
So I want to thank Nathan Kent, Sammy Dowd, and Ethan Runstadler once again for handling the meeting tonight. We're working on setting a date for the rabies clinic in mid-May. We'll have that information for you, and I just want to remind people that April 20th, we begin the voting process, and our voting date is on April 30th. So please get it on your calendar and start to figure out when you're going to get down there to vote. And that's it.
Thanks. Just a quick announcement. I spent lunch today at the Swampscott Senior Center, meeting and chatting with probably 24 seniors. So it's always great to see Heidi and her team down there, and just have an announcement for them. Swampscott for All Ages is working with local businesses and organizations to become more understanding of the needs faced by our older family and friends and those who may be living with dementia. 3 local restaurants have stepped up to be our pilot sites, become age and dementia friendly. We are thrilled to be working with the owners, staff, and management teams to ensure better understanding of the needs and challenges faced by people who may be more frail and or living with dementia. 3 kickoff events are planned at each of these 3 restaurants. So please join us for a celebration and light refreshments. Cafe Avellino, where we will kick off this Forget Me Not initiative, will be happening on April 23rd at 3 p.m. Mission on the Bay will host the second kickoff on May 7th at 3 p.m. And Periwinkles is also excited to pilot this initiative. Their efforts will happen on May 9th at 3 p.m. So hope you can join us. Unless there's anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you.